It's gonna stay looking like that. What's this?
All right. So, welcome, you guys. Today, we're going to be looking at a speech by a man named Elie Wiesel, and we're going to be analyzing this speech to look at the way that he develops his argument through it. This is going to help you guys when you start actually writing argumentative papers and speeches. And you probably have all seen a formula for doing so, but he uses the formula and breaks it, so it's very powerful. Has anyone ever heard of Elie Wiesel before? No. He is a Holocaust survivor.
For real?
This is a speech called The Perils of Indifference.
Is he dead by now?
He is not, actually. He's an old guy. He was a child during the Holocaust, survived because he was just over the age limit. And he is a very famous writer and speaker today. He lives in Israel. And this is a speech that he gave in the 90s to Bill Clinton when he was president and Hillary Clinton when she was first lady and some other dignitaries. He was making the speech just to give you a little background knowledge of what was going on in the world at that time. The Rwandan genocide had just happened, if you guys have ever heard of that.
Yeah, I heard.
What was that about?
You said Rwanda?
Yeah.
Isn't that like they was going through like a war or something with the what was the other side that they was going with? I know that the other side was kept killing them.
Yeah.
And I had saw the movie. And the other side kept killing them. They was they had a lot of people who had died.
Yeah, exactly. And Hotel Rwanda was
Yeah,
a
Hotel
civil
Rwanda.
war, and they were killing lots and lots of innocent people. At the same time, there was a civil war going on in Eastern Europe that America had been intervening more or less in some of them. And so this is Elie Wiesel speaking to Americans, trying to convince us of something. So we're going to read it and just find out. Would anyone like to read it? Or else I can. Okay. Mr. President, Mrs. Clinton, members of Congress, Ambassador Holbrooke, Excellencies, friends. 54 years ago today, a young Jewish boy from a small town in the Carpathian Mountains woke up, not far from Goethe's beloved Weimar, in a place of eternal infamy called Buchenwald. He was finally free, but there was no joy in his heart. He thought there never would be again. Liberated a day earlier by American soldiers, he remembers their rage at what they saw. And even if he lives to be a very old man, he will always be grateful to them for that rage and also for their compassion. Though he did not understand their language, their eyes told him what he needed to know. But they too would remember and bear witness. So he starts off with a personal anecdote. What is an anecdote?
Like a story?
Okay. So what we're going to do, he tells a lot of this speech through anecdotes, so every time you see one, I want you to go ahead and just circle the anecdote. Just right there on the page. You can use a pen, you can use one of your colored pencils.
So that was a big anecdote right there.
Right there. What is he introducing us to here?
What he's going to talk about, I'm guessing.
What did we get out of just this little anecdote?
That it might be something major.
There's got to be something major. Why do you say that?
Because you tell you a lot about yourself.
Okay.
So it might be something that's
Trying to become something very personal that he's trying to tell us. Where is Buchenwald?
You said what is what?
Does anyone know what Buchenwald is?
It's I think it's a German word. It's a German word.
So, Buchenwald was the concentration camp where Elie Wiesel was. And he's connected to Auschwitz. You guys are familiar with Auschwitz?
I've heard it.
Yeah, so this is his childhood. He's using his personal anecdote as a hook in here to tell us about his topic. So let's go on. He's going to give us some more background knowledge now. And now I stand before you, Mr. President, Commander-in-Chief of the army that freed me, and tens of thousands of others, and I am filled with a profound and abiding gratitude to the American people. Gratitude is a word that I cherish. Gratitude is what defines the humanity of the human being, and I am grateful to you, Hillary or Mrs. Clinton, for what you said, and for what you are doing for children in the world, for the homeless, for the victims of injustice, the victims of destiny and society. And I thank all of you for being here. We are on the threshold of a new century, a new millennium. What will the legacy of this vanishing century be? How will it be remembered in the new millennium? Surely it will be judged, and judged severely, in both moral and metaphysical terms. These failures have cast a dark shadow over humanity. 2 world wars, countless civil wars, the senseless chain of assassinations, Gandhi, the Kennedys, Martin Luther King, Sadat, Rabin, bloodbaths in Cambodia and Algeria, India and Pakistan, Ireland and Rwanda, Eritrea and Ethiopia, Sarajevo and Kosovo, the inhumanity in the Gulag and the tragedy of Hiroshima. And on a different level, of course, Auschwitz and Treblinka. So much violence, so much indifference. Alright, so this is the background section we have here. What do you guys think the topic of his speech is going to be based on his book, based on his background section, and just based on the title and what we know about him?
Probably like stuff how that are inhumane and that's killed millions of our people. Can I have some water?
Yes, yes.
In the refrigerator?
The freezer.
Oh.
Yeah, go in the freezer, not the fridge. There's sharks in the fridge.
For real?
Yes.
Don't go in there.
Look at her face.
So we get that he's probably going to be talking about inhumanity, like horrible things that people have done to each other. Take a look at that title for me really quickly, The Perils of Indifference. That's kind of a weird thing because we think of the word indifference and that's sort of it seems sort of neutral, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what does the word peril mean? Does anyone know?
I don't think I heard of it before.
Peril, R-I-L, means danger. So if we think about the dangers of indifference, and we know that it's linked to this inhumanity, and we know that that has something to do with his childhood in the Holocaust. What kind of ideas are you guys getting from the background information that he gave right here?
This is called background, like all the danger that they have, or that they went through and stuff, all the danger in the world, like all over the country.
Or what he was surrounded by.
Like his environment.
Based on his
Okay. The danger that he was surrounded by based on his childhood. Is that what I'm getting here? Alright, so let's see. This is how he's introduced his topic. Let's go on. What is indifference? Etymologically, the word means no difference. A strange and unnatural state in which the lines blur between light and darkness, dusk and dawn, crime and punishment, cruelty and compassion, good and evil. What are its courses and inescapable consequences? Is it a philosophy? Is there a philosophy of indifference conceivable? Can one possibly view indifference as a virtue? Is it necessary at times to practice it simply to keep one's sanity, live normally, enjoy a fine meal and a glass of wine as the world around us experiences harrowing upheavals? So now he's starting to introduce his topic. He's starting to give us some background knowledge here. He already gave us his background. He's introduced us. He's talking about not just the dangers of his childhood, but specifically the dangers of indifference. And he uses these kind of questions, these rhetorical questions, to start to get us thinking about it a little bit. Alright, so here's what I want you guys to do with those colors that you've selected. This is where we're going to start. After we've gotten all the background knowledge, we're going to get into the meat of the speech, and we're going to start using the 3 different colors for different things. So if you go to this last page, your worksheet page, at the top, we got 4 definitions. The first one, we're going to look to see if this logical argument is valid. What is valid mean, Tanya?
Valid means like if it would fit.
See if it would fit. Okay, I like the way that you're putting that in there. Would you read the definition that we have?
Having a sound basic and logic or fact reasonable or
Yeah. Good. Thank you. So that makes sense. So if something's reasonable, then we see how it fits together. We see how it is in there. So we're going to be using your three colors to see how he makes his argument valid through claims, counterclaims, and evidence. So I want you to highlight each of those with a different color, and you'll be highlighting them in the speech. What is it? Have you heard any of these terms before?
No.
Does anyone?
Well, I've heard of claim and evidence and
Okay.
counterclaim, but
Okay, so it sounds like you. Yeah, it sounds like you have. What have you heard about claim? What's a claim? A point.
right, which is something that you're stating.
Something that you're stating, exactly. One of the reasons you're giving behind what you're arguing. These are all good answers here. Go for it, please.
An assertion of the truth of something, typically one that is disputed or in doubt.
Right, so it's your assertion, it's what you're putting forward. What is a counterclaim?
It's like something a little different. Like say, you say, I think generification can be a good thing, but that's what you're arguing. But the counterclaim would be like, I have some evidence to say why it's a bad thing also.
Exactly. It's what you're saying in response, because you're saying to argue
In
against it.
conclusion,
Right. So does anyone have any idea why you might include a counterclaim in your one argumentative speech?
so that you know that you're not fully right, but you believe that you're right most of the time, I think.
Nice. So to show, just if I can take that a little further, to show that you can actually build on somebody else's argument. You know the other side of that, but yours is more right once you've considered both sides. Exactly, Josh. What about evidence? This is something that you guys all know, something you guys all do. What do you use evidence for? What is it?
To prove your point.
To prove a claim, to back up your claim? What kind of things can you use it as evidence when you're writing a speech?
pictures.
Pictures,
Quote.
quotes. Nice. What else? What else could you use as evidence?
Facts.
Facts. Messages. What do you mean by messages?
If you're trying to prove a point to somebody, you can always go back to their messages and what they sent in screenshots.
Okay.
Different things for
Okay. So something that somebody else has said.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Interesting. Right. So we can also.
If you want your point to be right, then you gotta show that you want it to be right. You gotta have some type of evidence, because they gonna look at you like, I don't believe you. You don't have that much evidence for me to say, oh, well, this cannot be whatever.
Perfect. Nice, Tanya. Perfect. So once you've chosen those three colors, we're going to go in through the speech and actually find how Elie Wiesel uses this to talk about indifference and possibly the dangers of it. Let's go back to where we left off. Of course, indifference can be tempting. More than that, seductive. It is so much easier to look away from victims. It is so much easier to avoid such rude interruptions in our work, our dreams, our hopes. It is, after all, awkward, troublesome to be involved in another person's pain and despair. Yet, for the person who is indifferent, his or her neighbor are of no consequence, and therefore their lives are meaningless. Their hidden or even visible anguish is of no interest. Indifference reduces the other to an abstraction. So in that paragraph, what point do you guys think that he's now trying to make about indifference?
Do you want us to underline this?
I want you guys don't underline anything yet. talk about that. What do you think he means when he says indifference can be tempting?
I mean, because you said, hold on, first of all, and something means to
Tempting?
means to like do it like you're tempted, like if I say, okay, stab this person, I'm tempted to stab them.
So to be tempted by something, I tempted you guys here with pizza. To be tempted by
A
something.
bribery. A bribery.
Like kind of, yeah. It can be
So-
something that you want, something that looks nice, something you want to have. Is tempting.
What does he mean when he says, it's much easier to avoid such rudeness interruptions to our work, our dreams and our hopes? Like, does he mean like, okay, that's, it's easier to avoid all that stuff, but it's not easier to like, for us, like, he says it's easier to do that, but he said it is, after all, awkward, troublesome to involve in another person's pain and despair. What does he mean by that?
Let's use an example. Have you ever seen somebody you don't know really well crying in class?
Yeah.
What do you do in that situation?
I don't. Well, sometimes I go up to them, but most of the time I don't say anything. 'Cause I really don't know them.
Why do you not say anything to
I
them?
tell somebody else. Because I feel so that if I don't know the person, I really don't care about
And it's
them.
not your business
Yeah, it's not my business. So
to talk to that person. But if I see you crying constantly and I feel as though I don't know where your head is at, I have to talk to you and at least try to get your day back on the track.
Because it can be
Because
awkward.
I'm a sensitive person myself.
Yeah.
I
it
don't
can be
like to see people
for
cry.
just awkward, just go up to the person asking them what's wrong, and they just think that you're just all up
That's
in
just
their
like you
business.
asking for somebody's snacks and you don't talk to them. That's kind of rude, and you don't talk to them, so you just come up there because they got something. Basically, that's what people do.
So when he says it is, after all, awkward, troublesome to be involved in another person's pain or despair, that's exactly what he means. But it would be awkward to go up to someone, especially if they're crying like really hard and you really don't know them, and you're kind of like, well, it's none of my
Because if you really
business.
don't know me, I'm gonna tell you I don't know. I'm just gonna tell you nothing is wrong with you. And if I know you, I'm gonna talk to you and tell you stuff. You will get a full story about what's going on. If it's your sharing my life, it's your life. It's deep.
But how do you know? How do you know that this
And you
isn't a
might
person
just
that wants
you
to
might
open up?
you could tell somebody you can relate to them, but also you can't relate if it didn't happen to you. You're just saying, oh yeah, I can relate just to get the information. So that's basically what I want to say. This what happened. This is how.
So when he's talking about indifference, he's talking about not doing anything in that situation. So you guys see why it's tempting. You guys see why it is seductive. Why people might want to be indifferent when they're faced with something. Because you may not know if you're doing even the right thing, right? What if I make a misstep here? What if I accidentally make someone even more upset? What if I don't know what I'm doing? What if this is that? What if I say the wrong thing?
You don't want to
Right?
be in that situation because it's awkward.
Yeah, it's awkward. It's difficult. You know, if you want to like if you want to be able to live a comfortable life, like
And then you don't know what that person
much
wants to
easier.
see.
Right.
It's hard for them.
So
If
then,
you tell them something, you make it worry, then it's hard for back to hold.
so then that's his point at the first part here. So let's look at that second part. Yet for the person who is indifferent, his or her neighbor are of no consequence. What does it mean when a person is of no consequence?
That means they don't have no penalty, like they don't get in trouble.
Like diplomatic immunity.
It's more along the lines of immunity. It's the fact that they don't. We're not just thinking about consequences in terms of like punishments or bad consequences for their actions. A person of consequence is a person who can create things in the world. So to have no consequence, you can't create things. Exactly. It means that you don't have an impact on anything. So when they says that,
Like
Yeah.
for a person who doesn't care.
so for the person who doesn't care, their neighbor has no impact on their life.
So they really don't care about anything. So that's just like being indifferent because for them they've been indifferent because they really don't care about anything. Like we were saying that we don't really care for that person if we see them crying because we don't know them.
So then what does that mean that you think of that person? When you don't intervene, when you're thinking about yourself and not the person crying?
You're not trying to be selfish.
I think that might be what he's getting at. Is at a certain point you're thinking not of that person. And therefore, because let's go on. So he's talking about the neighbor, he's talking about the person in trouble. And therefore, their lives are meaningless. So to the person who is indifferent, the people that they are indifferent toward are meaningless.
Meaningless to them because they don't really care. Oh, I can do it.
Can you explain that to
Okay,
me?
so the person who is, so the person who is not hurt and they see another person hurt, they are indifferent and it has no consequence and their life is meaningless because, like she said, he might say that we're being selfish and so we seeing this person cry a lot, we just meaningless and we don't care. It's just like we say we don't care for the world, but we really don't. We just don't care for that person because we don't know them. So we're not really being meaningless. He just say we are, just because of that one little thing that he just based it on.
Okay, let's keep Janae's in mind. Alright? So let's look at this section and think about what Janae is saying about what she's saying here. And I think from the way that he's speaking, I think that this part, yet for the person who is indifferent, his or her neighbor are of no consequence and therefore their lives are meaningless, I think of that as a claim. So with your color that you chose as a claim, underline that part. And because that sounds connected to the dangers of indifference that he's talking about in the title. So that sounds to me like a point that he's trying to make. Now let's look at the first part of this paragraph, where he says indifference can be tempting, and more than that, seductive. It is so much easier to look away from victims. It is so much easier to avoid such rude interruptions to our work, our dreams, our hopes. It is, after all, awkward, troublesome to be involved in another person's pain and despair. So when he's making that point, the reason why I don't think that is the major point that he's trying to make, is because of the language that he uses. This is about indifference being easier. It's easier. Things that you're indifferent to are rude. These all sound like very small things, right? These all sound like, you know what, maybe the person who's crying is crying because like some drama that doesn't have to involve anybody. Maybe they're crying because like, I don't know,
Like
they
a
got
very little small thing.
like a very little small thing, right? So he's talking about very little small things in this, and I would say that this is a counterclaim because he is not placing a lot of importance on it. He's using his language to tell us that it is not that important. So I would use your color that you use for counterclaims and underline this part.
What part was it?
Starting with, of course, indifference can be tempting. And down to, it is, after all, awkward, troublesome to be involved in another person's pain and despair.
Where is it?
At the very bottom of that first page.
Oh. So circle that with which color do we use it again?
Whichever colors that you used,
To claim?
this one was counterclaim.
Oh, So I can use a different color.
Yes, whichever your counterclaim color is.
Alright,
So which one, this was counterclaim right here?
Yes. Josh, do you see how these two are opposed?
yeah.
How?
Well, I think they was talking about the part where you couldn't really, like, you shouldn't get it. Kind of what Janae was saying. It's not really none of your business. You don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
And the other part, kind of confused me a little bit. Yeah. I think I might have to like reread it again, like have a better.
Okay. Okay, why don't you reread that and think about it and come back to it, okay? Okay. So take a look, I want you guys to read the next paragraph and tell me which side you think that that's supporting.
The next paragraph is gonna say, is
Over-
it rooted in our tradition?
Go from over there behind the black gates of Auschwitz to they were dead and did not know it. On the top of the second page. Yeah. Just the first from over there to they were dead and did not know it. Okay. What do you guys, are you guys getting anything out of this?
I'm not.
Okay. So you got one now.
Yeah, we did the same about everything, so I don't know if it.
Tyler, tell me what you're starting to think about.
The people don't realize, well, so what he says that when the last prophet said they were dead, then know that, like they probably just don't feel like they don't exist no more, just by going through what they're going through, like, it said, they no longer feel pain, hunger, and thirst, and they feel nothing. Like, they probably just finally exist. Like, just give up. Cause the last part, that's what got me there.
What's some loose language,
You see it's in quotes. He says that's what these people were called. It's a German word that they use.
You not pronounce it?
Musulmana. So now we see that he's tying it back to his personal history in the Holocaust. You can tell when he says Auschwitz, right? And he's talking about the most tragic of all prisons. And just like what Tyra said, at this point, it's like they've completely given up, and it's like they're dead because they're not feeling anything anymore. Because they don't have opinions on things anymore. They don't have feelings anymore. Do you see any way to logically connect that to what he's saying about indifference?
Kind of thing. A little bit, I think so, just a little bit. Because the difference, different people have indifference, because they really care. They really care for everybody. Like you said, that meaningless. These people here, they're also meaningless too. They don't care about one another because they're thinking about themselves right now. They are dying, they are thirsty and hungry, and like they really can't think about nobody else but themselves. So they can't go to nobody else and help them if they in the same place, if they're taking the same pain.
So what you're saying, what it sounds like you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that at the point where people no longer care about things, that makes their lives meaningless. Is that what you're getting at? Okay, so that sounds to me like it supports what his claim that he's making about indifference up top. Josh, did you think about that? Did you see how there was a conflict between the counterclaim and the claim in that paragraph?
They was talking about indifference and stuff like that. How it's kind of like middle. It's not really a bad thing or really a good thing, because you said something about good and evil. So to me, that hits my brain saying you're not really a bad person if you're doing it. Like if you're avoiding a person because they're upset, you're not really a bad person, but you're not also a good person.
So you're in the middle.
Yeah, you're kind of in the middle. That's how I kind of felt. But that's what this whole paragraph kind of talked about in a way. Like it was given different meanings of that. And I think it also talked about how we should do it because it's no short time. She's like the same to people and saying to live normally. So it's saying that you should like go help out that person because it's humans who are it's, I guess I'm saying it's a natural thing.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. That it is a natural thing to both want to protect yourself by being indifferent, but it also is part of what makes you human to care.
So basically, what he's saying is you can't protect nobody else if you can't protect yourself.
Yeah.
So you gotta own up to how you're feeling, what's going on in your brain before you can help somebody else get their struggles together and try to put their stuff together and build them back up and have them their mind back to normal.
Because you probably have been in that person's shoes before. You know what they're going through. So you're like, okay, yeah, I know what that person's going through. I don't really know that person. So I'm not going to really do anything because that person's going to get through it how like I get through. I get through it.
And sometimes you can't tell a lot of people to do certain things. You gotta let them stress, and then because when you stress, that's when you put together problems in your head. That's when you get that vibe like okay, I got this. This is my next step. Right here, I'm gonna do this and go from there.
Okay, so I see where you're getting that. I see where he definitely talks about, like it's good for your sanity.
You can't help nobody if you can't help
For your
yourself.
work, for your hopes and your dreams, to try to remain indifferent to certain things, and you can't help anyone unless you're sane. So let's keep that in mind. That's him making a very effective counterclaim here. That's really getting him thinking about the other side. Let's keep that in mind, but be thinking about this point that Tyra made and that Janae made and Tanya helped out with about how the people that were totally indifferent are basically dead and haven't realized it yet.
So they died from not helping. Basically,
You know, they die from they right now they're in the camp. You talking about people that's in the camp. That they've been tortured a lot and like they've been through a lot, had to do work and stuff. When he said like they already did, they just don't know it. They dying from thirst, hunger, pain.
they died slow.
Yeah, they dying slow, but they don't know they dying because they got all this pain and stuff running through their head, and they just not thinking about they're not even thinking about dying right now because they already know they're dying.
Thanks to great historical background knowledge too.
Could you kind of compare this to how we were treated at that time? Black people were treated during slavery times, or even during the Jim Crow laws era.
Absolutely. That is a little bit different from the argument that he's trying to make. So let's keep going and see how we can connect it back there, okay? Because I want you to keep that in mind, definitely. That's something to always consider when studying the Holocaust. Is like the Holocaust is a really particularly horrifying example, but this is not by any means the only example of oppression in the world. It's not by any means the only example of when people were really,
There
really
was
harmed.
white people invading this country, North America, taking over from the Indians.
Let's keep those in mind and keep going from rooted in our tradition. Does anyone want to read? Because I know sometimes people go for it.
Rooted in our tradition, some of us left at the abandon of humanity. There was not the ultimate. We left that
Felt?
we felt that to be abandoned by God was worse than to be punished by Him. Better and unjust God than indifferent one. For us to be ignored by God was harsher punishment than to be a victim of His anger. Man can live far from God, not outside God. God is wherever we are, even in suffering,
Thank you. Okay. So, why does he say better an unjust God than an indifferent one?
So better for that God to kid and for that God not to, for the other God not to
Right.
and be stuck up. Is what he's saying. So it's going back to being indifferent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Have you ever heard the expression the opposite of love is not hate? It's indifference. So that sounds like what you're saying. It's much better that
What does that phrase actually mean?
what do you guys think it means? Just based on what you've heard, on what he's sort of saying here?
I thought she already said it. I thought she already said it.
Basically, I think, to me, it means hate because, not necessarily hate, but it don't,
When she said it's like it's better to have a God who cares and it's better to have a God who cares than not a God who's indifferent, which what doesn't care like that. They want his 100% care, and not just his indifference of like his. That's like a sin. I don't know. And asking him for something, be like, well, I don't know. I don't know if I can help you with this or not.
you want him to give you the help. The opposite of love is not hate, it's different. That's what I'm asking.
That's exactly what it means. That when you hate someone, you still care about them.
That's small stuff. Y'all didn't do the movie?
No, there's no one in here doing a movie. Yeah.
Be learning.
We're learning. Yeah, we got some scholars. No, that's it. That's exactly what it means, right? You ever have, for example, an ex, and once you break up, you're still mad. If you're still really mad, that means you still care. But if you're completely over it, you don't care anymore.
No, we all had that.
I did not know.
If they can still
I did
bother
not
you,
know that.
if he can still get under your skin, then you still care on some level, right? You still care what he thinks. You still care what he does.
But sometimes you can't let that person get to you. You have to be better than that. You have to like show him that you don't care for us. Because certain people, they do things, they get under your skin, then they say they're gonna get this person and do that, and agitate you, or so you shouldn't let them like that. Then you can lose that.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right.
Why did he
Let's
say that?
put, huh?
He said we felt abandoned by God was worse than being punished by Him. Why did he say that? We felt that being abandoned by God was worse than being punished by Him. Like, God didn't have nothing to do with this. He didn't punish you, and like He didn't abandon you. He's always in the heart. He's always not going to answer your prayers. He's not going to be physically there to help you.
Basically, if he put himself in a position where how he would feel if God did the same thing, that's what he doing.
He's feeling a little bit like God let that happen, right?
But he didn't. So he probably having no one to blame it on but him. Because that's what everybody
When you
comes
put
to
yourself-
say their prayers. And everybody comes to with their problems. So he coming to him with his problem. He's like, oh, okay, you're not helping me. I don't know what I'm talking to you for. This is useless. So you're just punishing me for like all the bad things that I did. Like that is so not true.
That's just like me going to Janae. Janae can't help me. Oh my God. Then I start panicking. I'm like, well, Janae, my problems is my problems. So basically, his problems, he takes his problems, he step out his shoes and give his shoes to somebody else, and then somebody else his problems. Basically, that's what this is basically saying. Like he's not owning up to his problems. Like he can't help himself.
Well, so his problems, just to remind you though, his problems are not like he didn't pay his rent or he
Yeah.
couldn't find a job. His problems are the Holocaust.
Yeah, his problems are the Holocaust, but he
Yeah.
shouldn't be blaming all of the Holocaust on God.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm trying to say.
But
That's
if
the
you
point.
okay, I see where you're coming from there, and that is an opinion. But also, you're thinking about the Jews are a religion. They're and
Yeah, they are religious.
yeah, it's a
So they
religion
goes
we're
to
talking
him for
about.
problems and stuff.
Yeah, so they believe that God is who controls
It
things.
controls everything.
Right. So if something really good happens, you thank God, and if something really bad happens,
you just
say,
want to.
like, why did that happen?
Yeah, why did that happen?
Yeah, so you would want to have a reason, right?
Mhm.
So when something like the Holocaust happens,
So you need a reason
you
for
don't
everything.
necessarily
A reason
have
for
a
a
reason.
reason.
Yeah. So let's take a look at this paragraph really quickly.
I'm trying to see what time it is.
I don't know. You have to pause it. You know what time it is? 3:31. Y'all can do this one thing for me really quickly, and then I want you guys to have pizza, and I will let you guys take off. What do you think is the claim that he's making in this paragraph that we just read about God?
Basically, he just made.
I think what it said, whatever.
Say that again.
What do you think is the claim that he's making in this section about God?
Probably God is wherever we are, even in suffering, even in suffering. That could probably be.
Yeah, that's fine.
So remember that the topic is indifference.
Are you asking what we think it means when he says that?
Sort of. What I'm asking is the claim, right? The claim is the statement he's trying to make. The claim's his point that he's trying to make. He's trying to make a point about indifference through this section where he's talking about
So when he
God.
say man can live far from God, not outside God, God is wherever we are, even in suffering, which means God is always going to be around to help through thick and thin.
Okay. That's exactly what that means. That's exactly what that sounds like to me. That God's always around you. If you're a religious
Yeah.
person, you believe God is everywhere. All
Better
part of it.
an unjust God than an indifferent one.
Why do you say that, Janelle?
Because we talking about indifference, and he said like, oh, we better to have our regular old God who we come to for our problems and stuff, better than just the one that doesn't really care. And he's talking about all these meaningless and like pain and suffering people when we don't care for other people. That's what we've been talking about throughout the whole paragraph.
Exactly. So then that would be the claim that he's making right there. And then his evidence, because we talked about evidence in terms of pictures, statistics, facts, screenshots, whatever it is. We talked about evidence in terms of that. Evidence can also just be reasons he's giving this. So what do you think his evidence within this paragraph of why it's better to have an unjust God than an indifferent one would be?
Which means they rather have a judging God than one who just don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you said earlier that God is that what he's saying down here, that God is everywhere, that God surrounds you, that you're always a part of God, maybe that could be some of his evidence that he's using, some of his reasons for why he's saying better an unjust God than an indifferent one. Because at least if God's everywhere, you want God to at least care about you. You don't want him to just like, yeah.
People always want somebody like us around you. You want to be the right person.
So that could be on. That's our evidence. Okay, so that's
Let's
our.
say God is everywhere.
It's part.
What was the claim that I'm trying to find that.
It say better an unjust God than indifferent ones.
Oh, that was our claim also.
Mm-hmm.
And what about the evidence? 'Cause I was,
Evidence where it say God is wherever we are.
Right. And you guys